Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to meet a man who believes that technology can and should be used for the good of society. His name is Jim Fruchterman, and he's the founder of a non-profit organization called Benetech that develops technology to do things ranging from providing access to books for people who are blind, to advancing environmental conservation, to aiding people who defend human rights. A leader in the field of optical character recognition, Jim co-founded Calera Recognition Systems in 1982. After deciding to join the non-profit sector, he was named an outstanding social entrepreneur by the Schwab Foundation and also won a MacArthur Fellowship, sometimes known as the MacArthur Genius Award. He says that Benetech's business model is similar to that of a high-tech startup company, except that it measures its return on investment not on the number of dollars earned, but on the number of lives improved. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot, Marty. Glad to be here.
Now, you were doing pretty well in the profit-making sector. What made you decide to switch to non-profit work?
Well, what had happened from my standpoint is, in college, I thought of making a reading machine for the blind. I was learning how to make smart bombs and using pattern recognition, and I thought this would be a cooler application. So when I'd started a company that actually made the technology that was possible, we built a prototype reading machine for the blind, showed it to our investors, and said, this should be a new product on top of our commercial products. And they said no. So because of the fact that it didn't make enough money, our investors didn't want us pursuing it, I decided to start a deliberately nonprofit high-tech company and actually go into the business of making reading machines for the blind as a break-even business, as essentially a social good, as opposed to delivering lots of return on investment to our investors.
What got you interested in blindness? Did you have some background in that or some experience?
No, and I'm unusual in the blindness field. People do tech for blind people in not having a personal connection. For me, it was the one cool idea I came up with in college, and I wasn't going to let go of it.
Now, you do stuff for the blind, but that's not all that Benetech does. You've got quite a few other projects. What are some of your other activities?
Well, I think there's so many places where technology exists that could help society, and it doesn't get applied to that because you can't make enough money. So helping environmentalists is a good example. So we help conservationists or people running campaigns. It's project management 101, but wrapped in terms that an environmentalist would be comfortable with. And another one of our big areas is human rights. I mean, the human rights field, in one sense, is an information processing industry that no one writes information processing software for because they can't make enough money. So from a grassroots group all the way up to a truth commission or a war crimes tribunal, we're the geeks behind the human rights movement trying to help them use the information to pursue justice, reconciliation, whatever their objective is.
So your products are basically software. You're writing software applications that enables people to pursue things that would be hard otherwise?
Yeah, I would say our main goal is to build not off-the-shelf kind of tools. We're not building a word processor for human rights activists or a spreadsheet for environmental folks. But we're trying to do the one thing or the two things that are really unique to that field, that if it was a for-profit industry, there would be 5 or 50 companies writing software for that. In the nonprofit sector, often there's 0, and we're trying to fill that gap.
Now, do the products you create ever bleed over into the profit-making sector? Do these things turn out to actually be useful for commercial applications as well?
When we start the projects, we don't think they're commercially interesting, but after a few years, if we actually prove that something's possible, it could become commercially valuable. As a matter of fact, our first project, which was making reading machines for blind people, after 10 years, we sold it to a for-profit company, got $5 million, and used that to start Bookshare, our library for blind and dyslexic people, and our human rights program. So we think, whenever we start a project, we think there could be a for-profit exit, but it's probably a fair distance off. Otherwise, we wouldn't touch it. Because we're not looking for something that's close to the for-profit, nonprofit line. We're looking for something that there's a chance to make a revolutionary impact. Maybe that we could, it's not going to be just a little ways from making money. It's going to be a long way. But the social good is big.
Now we're going to be talking some more about some of the projects you're working on, but we also have a video which shows some of your projects. So we're going to roll that video. Can we go ahead and see that video, please?
How many people can a single idea help?
Jim Fruchterman, Benetech founder and CEO, addresses an audience.
At Benetech, we think a single idea can help millions of people.
A logo. Pages form an arc next to the word Bookshare.
I believe in the right to a great education. People with a disability that keeps them from reading print, with our Bookshare online library, they can download the books they need for education, employment, for a better life.
A man with a visual impairment presses keys on a handheld device, searches the internet for an accessible book of mice and men, and reads a refreshable braille display on his laptop computer. At his desk, the man chats with a colleague, then wears a headset as he works. A logo. A line swoops around a globe in the word Martus.
I believe that technology can give voice to oppressed people all around the world.
On a rural farm, an interviewer wearing an orange-colored serape arrives carrying a laptop computer. A young woman greets the interviewer with a warm hug, and they sit outside in the sun.
By allowing human rights activists to safely document human rights abuses, our software helps advance the cause of human rights globally. Because every story of human rights abuse is a tool for justice.
The interviewer inputs notes in Spanish into the computer. A logo. A circular green arrow appears next to the word mortality.
I believe with the right technology tools, scientists can be more powerful in protecting our environment.
In footage, two researchers use a laptop computer to record data in a forest.
Our mortality software is there to be the indispensable tool for conservationists to better design and manage and learn from their projects so that they can better meet their conservation goals.
One researcher collects water samples, dipping several jars into a creek. The other inputs notes into a document created in mortality software.
As a nonprofit technology company, Benetech measures our return on investment by the number of lives that we assist. If we can deliver a sustainable technology solution, we'll have made change that will sustain for generations to come.
A title, Benetech, Technology Serving Humanity.
And that was just some of the projects that Benetech is working on right now. Jim, what do you like most about this type of work? What satisfies you the most?
Well, I'm a geek, and I like solving problems. And so people bring us some of society's toughest problems, and I don't have a lot of competitors. Because all my buddies here in Silicon Valley said, you can't make money in human rights. And so I get to do a lot of these fun things. And in many cases, access leaders in those fields and listen to what they want to see happen, as well as talking to grassroots groups and see if we can build tools that just make that more powerful. I mean, that's what we are, tool makers. And we want to make tool makers the people, let's say, the 90% of humanity that Silicon Valley usually doesn't get around to helping.
How do you decide what projects to work on? Do you go out looking for things to do, or do people come to you and ask for your help?
A little bit of both, but now I'd say it's mainly people bringing us problems. I mean, I think someone says, hey, there's technology, it's got a great social application, it's not going to make money. Let's ask Benetech and Jim to do it. And so we get probably 100 good ideas a year, and we can do a couple, maybe. So there's a real need for actually more Benetechs in the world, but this sort of gap exists in a way that we get to talk to those people, and then we actually operate a lot like venture capitalists do. So, is there a chance to make a gigantic return on investment? In our case, it's for society, not for our donors, right? So if we can deliver a unit of social good, like a book to a blind person, for 1/10 of what it costs the traditional way, that's got to be better. Can we come up with 3 exit options? 10 years from now, how will we solve this problem and not be doing it anymore? How can we get it sustainable so that it actually generates enough revenue to keep it going? Is someone on the team passionate about it? Do we have great partners in the field? So a lot of the same kind of considerations a VC would do, but we have a social twist to each one of them.
Is Benetech scalable? If people wanted to invest in you, could you expand enough to do all the problems that people bring to you?
I definitely think Benetech is scalable. I mean, we started with a single social enterprise around making reading machines for blind people. Now we're up to 8 different products in 4 different areas of the social sector. But I want to be clear, an investment in Benetech, you know exactly what your tax loss is up front. It's 100% deductible because we're a nonprofit. We don't take for-profit investment.
Is that a hard sell in Silicon Valley? I mean, do you have any traction with venture capitalists who are primarily for-profit and don't really think about whether it's going to benefit anybody?
Well, I think we have venture capitalists on our board and as donors, so we do make that case. I think the most important thing for me to get through to a venture capitalist is this is not technology business done badly, but philanthropic and social good done incredibly effectively. And as long as they change their frame from why isn't this going to make a boatload of money to wow, you mean my charitable dollar goes 10 times further with this project? Then I can actually get through to them and get them to become supporters of ours.
And charity is a huge business in this country. People give away billions and billions of dollars, so if you're doing something worthwhile, no reason why you shouldn't get a piece of that pie.
Well, and I think we're part of a class of innovators called social entrepreneurs. People are trying to solve social problems in a new way. And the world does need charity. I mean, if you've just been hit by a tsunami, you need charity, right? But I think what a lot of people have observed is that often charity misapplied doesn't actually solve the social problem. I mean, after you've gotten your immediate aid, you need to get back into a job. You need to get back into your own house. You don't need a tent city indefinitely. And I think that's where the social entrepreneurs really come in. We're trying to take people who are not very employable and help them be employable. We're trying to take people who are working on really important issues and give them the tools they need to be more effective at it. And that provides the kind of leverage that venture capitalists and Silicon Valley people are used to using to make money. We want to use that same leverage to do maximum social good.
I'm going to ask you what some of the most important social problems are, but before I do that, you brought a few devices to demonstrate to us, which is part of your work. So maybe you can show us what you've got here.
That sounds great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a couple tools. Now, these are actually used with our Bookshare digital library. And Bookshare is essentially sort of, I would say, Amazon meets Napster meets talking books to the blind dyslexic, but legal. The idea is that we use electronic books to take a book that someone can't read the print version of and turn it into something they can access. Now, right now, I'm showing off a Braille display. So this is what a blind person would use. And so they would download the book from Bookshare, let's say of Mice and Men or something like that. They would actually run their fingers along the Braille cells, which have popped up Braille characters for each one. And then when they get to the end of the line, they hit a button, and it pops up the next line of Braille characters. And then the next line of Braille characters. So basically, what this device is it's an entire book library in Braille for a blind person that can hold 1,000 or 5,000 books. And then we have another tool. So that helps blind people.
And what did Benetech do for that? Did you create the device or create the books? What was
We
Benetech's
create the
part?
books. We fill up these devices with books. So we have 40 different technology partners that build different tools for people with different kinds of disabilities. And then we essentially provide the content that those books turn into: speech, MP3, large print, Braille. And the tool I'm going to show you right now is actually for people who are dyslexic primarily. And it's called Read to Go. And it's an app on the iPad. And so essentially, this has a direct connection through Wi-Fi to our Braille library. And actually, it's not just a Braille library, it's a digital text library. And so I've downloaded a book. This happens to be Hatchet. And what I can do is actually hit the play button.
Anything. When he had rested a bit, he went back down to the lake and drank a couple of swallows of water. He wasn't all that thirsty, but he thought the water might help to take the edge off his hunger.
Now, I can set this to be larger, different colors. I can speed up the voice and the reading. But the whole idea is that as a dyslexic student, actually this karaoke-style presentation of the text helps the dyslexic person actually see and hear each word. Because a lot of dyslexic kids aren't so good at decoding words, sounding them out, figuring them out, but often they become decent sight readers. So once you've given them a complicated word and told them what it sounds like, then they know that word, and the next time they see it, they'll be more likely to be able to read it without having to have a device read it to them. So, but we have 250,000 users using our library and using many of these different tools, whether it's a MP3 player in their pocket, an Android phone, an iPhone, an iPad, an Android tablet, a PC, a Mac, a specialized device like the Braille display. The whole idea is we've turned print books they can't read into books they can read.
What kind of feedback do you get? Do you get a lot of positive feedback, people telling you this really helped them a lot?
Well, and I do think that's part of why I keep doing it. I remember I told my wife I'd do this nonprofit thing for a year, and that was 24 years ago. So it's pretty sticky. When someone comes up and says, I got through college because of you, or my dyslexic kid got through high school because they could actually read, that makes an engineer feel pretty good. I think it's a lot of what motivates the team at Benetech. We have 75 tech people based here in Palo Alto, and we love building these tools because we see our professional skills actually benefiting people that normally would get ignored by typical tech companies.
Now, what do you think are the most important social problems that you could be working on? Is it problems of the individual? An individual has a problem, or is it a group problem, a whole class of people has a problem?
Well, there's no one size fits all. So we build tools that are mainly focused on helping individuals, like our reading tools. I mean, the ultimate user is a blind and dyslexic person or a returning vet with a physical disability. But a lot of the rest of our work is actually aimed at helping organizations. So human rights groups, right? They're working on huge injustice around the world. And we have users in more than 100 countries reading a dozen different languages for human rights technology. And that actually helps us sort of take information, generally they're the stories of human rights abuse, and make sure they don't lose them. Because when we first talk to human rights groups, 95% of the stories that get given to a human rights group disappear within 5 years. Sometimes because the government suppresses it, sometimes because the group runs out of money, sometimes because termites ate the files, sometimes because the computer crashed. We want to make sure they actually have the information, and then we hope that they're actually going to use it to pursue a human rights objective, whether that's talking to a reporter about human rights abuse, or convincing people that the police are misbehaving, or that this minority group is being abused, or this group is being abused because of their identity. We want to make sure they have those stories, and then over time, when you build up a lot of stories, if you have 10,000 stories, that's a powerful asset for advocacy.
So it sounds like there's a bit of political controversy sometimes because maybe you're taking sides in a conflict, and conflicts can be hard to judge. The weaker party is not necessarily the one that has more justice on its side, although it may be. And you investigate the situations and see what is really going on and what are people really fighting about.
Well, people want to get down to the truth somehow, right? And that's often tough to find. And the interesting thing is, we are not a human rights group. We're the geeks that help human rights groups. And people find that surprising because they say, well, aren't you on this side? Aren't you on the side of the Syrian rebels? And we're like, well, no, we're actually on the side of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? We're here to see human rights is upheld. And if we're collecting data about a conflict and, a Syrian military officer's family is killed at their home, that's a human rights abuse, even if it happens to be by, someone who's associated with the current regime. And so many times people ask us the question, who did what to whom? And what is their differential liability? I mean, if the regime, and I'm not talking about Syria here, but if the regime killed 10 times more people than the rebels, well, what does that mean? We'll let the courts, public opinion, the Truth Commission, the War Crimes Tribunal decide what it means. Our job is making sure the data is as close to being accurate as possible, because then we think people will make better policy and better justice.
Now I'm going to ask you some questions about the core principles that are behind your work. But before I do that, we have some still images, some slides, which we're going to show.
Oh, great.
So let's go ahead and view the first slide, and maybe you can tell us what that is.
Well,
that looks like you.
Yeah, this is a machine gun nest in Sri Lanka. And normally my team doesn't let me go out in the field. But this time, this is before Sri Lanka's civil war was settled. They actually let me out there, and we were talking to human rights activists. And we came by essentially a military outpost. And I handed my buddy my camera, and I ran over there. I said, can I have my picture taken with the machine gun? They don't let me go out in the field very much anymore because of things like this. But anyway, it's really different. I think so many people in Silicon Valley understand talking to their users. What if your users aren't in the Valley? What if they're not even in the United States? Getting out there and actually talking to real human rights activists about what they're doing and seeing the problems they're having give us a lot more insight on what kind of tools we should build them.
Well, as an old software guy, I always knew that you had to go speak to the customers and know what their interests are. And we have another slide up here. What's this one about?
So much of social justice work is around telling stories. So this is actually an example of someone taking stories in a village in South Asia, taking down notes, what happened to your husband? Why was he arrested? Or did your son get, killed or abducted? And so these kind of stories get taken down, and then when people get back to the office, they actually enter those stories into our MARTA software. And of course, nowadays, we're actually moving to where more and more people are collecting this information on a mobile phone. And we have a new set of software that's designed to work on the current generation of Android phones. So
it sounds like no matter what you do, it's going to be recorded. That might or might not get you to stop doing it, but there will be a record of it somewhere, which is a sobering thought.
Well, we believe in transparency. We believe in access to information, right? And what is it? The most powerful disinfectant is sunlight, right? So if we can shine a light on these things, we can't necessarily stop human rights abuses, but we certainly make it harder to carry out these abuses in secret, or, as often happens, when people say these things are happening, these abuses are happening, often the people who are apologists for the people who are committing the abuses say, oh no, those people are lying, it didn't happen. If we can prove that's not the case, we can maybe shorten that time delay loop before society does something about that pattern of abuse.
Their cover will run for cover.
We hope so. We hope we can have a little bit of role. But of course, we're the geeks. It's actually the people collecting that information that are taking risks. And our job is making sure that we better defend the defenders of human rights. We don't endanger them, and we actually make them more powerful in their advocacy.
Okay, let's take a look at the next slide if we could.
Oh, so this is an example of where geeks can really make a powerful difference. This is a photograph of the National Police Archive in Guatemala. So 80 million pages from a secret police force that actually operated for about 100 years. And what happened is, the first question the Guatemalans asked us was, is there actual interesting human rights information in there? So we modeled all these giant piles. 80 million pages is warehouse fulls of documents. We picked 1,500 documents at random, and more than 10% had to do with a disappearance or human rights abuse. So on the strength of that, the Guatemalans were able to raise money from, I think, the Swiss, and actually start digitizing. There's now more than 10 million of these pages are on the web, both in Guatemala and at UT Austin, University of Texas Austin. And now family members can actually find the records of their disappeared brother or cousin or uncle or father, right? And find out what has happened. And based on that, geeks from Benetech actually testified in the trial of two police officers who disappeared, a very prominent labor organizer, and they were actually convicted and sentenced to prison. And some geeks that used to work for us are actually planning on testifying in the genocide trial of the former dictator Rios Montt. Not for any other thing than the analysis and the documentation we did. We're the technical experts that say these documents were gathered in a scientific way. As far as we know, they weren't cooked up, they weren't faked. And in the case of the genocide argument, Benetech people did analysis that said if you were a certain kind of Mayan Indian, local indigenous Indian, your chances of dying during Rios Montt was maybe 8x what it was of somebody else.
And I'm sure there are many places in the world where people die under mysterious circumstances. That seems like a pretty major field in itself.
Yeah. And I think often we're trying to find what's called differential mortality. I mean, a certain number of people die in any society over a certain period of time. But if suddenly the number of people dying doubles or triples, you start going, what's going on here? And in many of these large-scale conflicts, it's not people being shot. It's people being driven off their land, people being starved, people dying of illness. And you can actually see the imprint of, say, an ethnic cleansing or basically people being driven off their land by the increased mortality rates. And ultimately, someone's responsible for those kids dying, right? And so we want to make sure we understand what the numbers are.
I think we have one more slide. Can we see that? There it is.
Oh, so here's an example of environmental groups. So environmental groups are trying to protect our society, right? And some of them are biologists and field people doing, restoration, trying to measure trees. So it turned out that there was no project management software for environmentalists. That basically the best thing they had when we started this project was an Excel spreadsheet. And so if I was running a construction project, I'd have 50 software packages to choose from. If I run a golf course, I have 4 or 5 software packages to operate a golf course. What if I'm managing a wetlands restoration? What if I'm trying to preserve some primates in China? What if I'm trying to develop a conservation plan for a national park or run a campaign to convince my community to recycle? Now you have one open source and free software package called Mortality from Benetech. And actually, the environmental groups voluntarily send us money so that we can do the next version.
Do you have something like a dream project, something that you would love to work on above all else?
Well, right now, something that, and of course, we're always working on new projects. And so my current, sort of exciting project is we've been looking at how Silicon Valley can do more about climate change. How can we actually help local communities figure out more of what they can do? So we've actually talked a lot to Joint Venture Silicon Valley, which is sort of our local communities here about what they need. And I'd say right now, it's the chase is on. We haven't figured out exactly what the right solution is. We're pretty sure there's some opportunities here where the commercial world's not doing it, and software developers could do something big that could actually advance that. And the other cool thing we're doing, it's sort of a meta project. So many people ask us to do things for them. 100 great ideas come into Benetech every year, and we have to say no to most of them. So we actually created a website called Social Coding for Good that's designed to match up geeks from Silicon Valley companies, other technology companies, up with open source social good projects like Wikimedia, which do the Wikipedia encyclopedia, or Code for America, or Frontline SMS, and actually get those geeks where they work for a day job, making money, and in their volunteer time, they actually help society by helping Wikipedia or one of these other projects, or a Benetech project. So we're trying to actually marshal more of the tech sector, because I think in the heart of most techies, they want to do something that's important. They want to do something socially good. And when I go to a high-tech company, and instead of asking them for cash, I ask them for a free license to their stuff, they say yes 80% of the time. Because people are really proud of what they've created, and yet Silicon Valley is really good at saying that doesn't make enough money, kill it. And we want to say, no, if it actually helps society, let it live, let a social entrepreneur like us do it, and maybe you can become a social entrepreneur too and see it happen.
So is that model flourishing? Would you say that your work is flourishing and more people are getting involved in it?
Oh yeah, I mean, for the first 10 years, I thought I was a lone nut job in Silicon Valley, not trying to become a billionaire, right? And some of my friends kind of said things like that. Well, how do you make money off of this? Well, we get a salary, but we'll never get rich. I'm like, well, what's good about that? I'm like, well, I'm helping a lot of disabled people. I'm really proud of that. Now I think the word has actually gotten around. I think the dot-com bubble popping, globalization, 9/11, these things have made people think more and more about what we're doing for global society. And so we have a new generation of students that are the most on fire since the 60s, at least that's in my opinion. And we have more and more people thinking about how can I actually do something good. So we have this class of people. After 10 years, I found out that I was a social entrepreneur. And Jeff Skoll, co-founder of eBay, has a foundation that actually gives money to social entrepreneurs. So we've been very lucky to be supported by Jeff Skoll. And a lot of the things that we're doing help become possible because of donors here in Silicon Valley. And then, we want to see this happening so that there are not just one Benetech, but dozens of Benetechs.
Well, it sounds like you're
or
doing
hundreds.
Sounds like you're doing great work, and I wish you the best of luck. We have to wrap now because we have to close the show. I've been speaking with Jim Fruchterman of Benetech, doing a lot of good things, technology serving humanity. I'm Marty Wasserman. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. See you next time. And thanks for coming.